All right, I think this is what they call how they make the sausage, how they're coming up with a markup now on that House measure. On the tax cut thing, of course, it's going to be a multi-tiered process here, and maybe a multi-week, multi-month, hard to say. But pollster Frank Luntz has been looking at this because it's not so much the cuts themselves, it's maybe the way they're going about it, or I guess the image, Frank, that they're foisting along here, right?
The communications, the same thing that happened with the health legislation, where they went to the American people and said, we have an alternative, and the public said, we don't like Obamacare, but we don't like what you're doing either. I think that there's a tremendous challenge within the GOP to communicate exactly what they're doing and why, to set the predicate, to set the context, and then show the evidence that it's successful. And Neil, I brought a few ads for companies, and full disclosure, I've worked for all these people. I want to show you what's not working right now, an advertisement that is focusing on corporate tax relief that the public is seeing. The higher that the lines climb, the more favorable the reaction. Okay. These lines didn't climb much at all. Let's take a look.
Lowest economic recovery since World War II. Millions of Americans drop out of the workforce. Take-home pay, flat. America's outdated tax system has produced slow economic growth. We have one of the highest tax rates in the world. American companies are disappearing along with good-paying jobs. We need a plan to make America competitive again. Call Congress and tell them we can't wait any longer to give American workers the tax reform they deserve.
So, Neil, that's a good ad, but it's not a great ad because it doesn't personalize, individualize, humanize what's happening here. It doesn't emphasize that the first $50,000 that a family of four makes is not taxed. It doesn't emphasize how it is simplifying the tax code, and that's why it doesn't do well. But I brought with me two more ads that do incredibly well. And the first one actually uses the words, language, and visual of JFK himself to sell tax reform. This one works. Let's take a look.
Are too high today and tax revenues are too low. And the soundest way to raise the revenues in the long run is to cut the rates now. And the reason is that only full employment can balance the budget, and tax reduction can pave the way to that employment. The purpose of cutting taxes now is not to incur a budget deficit, but to achieve the more prosperous, expanding economy, which can bring a budget surplus.
Who would have thought that JFK would be the great communicator on tax policy for 2017, but he is. And that ad is one of the most effective. And Neil, I brought one more with me, that this one is also working because it individualizes and personalizes the need of hardworking Americans to get the tax relief that they deserve. Let's roll that one. Look at how powerful, how those last two scored so well, because they took a different approach to tax relief, and it's a message for congressional and senatorial Republicans that they better step up their communication game because as of right now, they're being misunderstood, they're being mislabeled, and they're in danger of losing support for this tax reform.
You know, to your point, you're a great communicator too, Frank. I think they're too lost in the weeds, and they're explaining the weeds. And they're not really just stepping back and saying, this is what we're doing. I mean, even that JFK one that I was particularly fond was, it was just looks at the arguments for just increasing revenue that would win over liberals and conservatives. But then when you get mired in all this gobbledygook, you lose folks.
Exactly. This means more take-home pay. This means higher wages.
Right.
And the language is it lets you keep more of your hard-earned dollars. But I don't hear them saying that. A similar example is that it simplifies the tax codes and gets rid of the loopholes, the bailouts, and the handouts. I don't hear them saying it, and neither do the American people.
That's fascinating stuff. Good job, my friend. Frank Luntz.
Thank you.
Really good stuff.